Welcome to the Children of the Sun program for June 4th, 2021, with my very special guests, Pauline and David McNab. I wanted to take a moment here to give a great many thanks to Pauline and David for coming all the way in from New Zealand to talk with us here on the Children of the Sun radio program about their massively transformative work. I really enjoyed our conversation talking about rebirthing breathwork, physical immortality, and especially the courage needed to pursue authentic personal growth and healing in the face of a culture of suppression. So, without further ado, here is the Children of the Sun radio program for June 4th, 2021. All right. So we'll start. So as everyone knows, it's a regular listener on the program here on Children of the Sun. We like to focus on. I like to focus on people who are contributing positive energy to the local community and also from time to time to the world community. And my two very special guests this week certainly fit that description. Pauline and McNab and David McNab are two of the world's foremost rebirthing breathworkers. They're the authors of several books, including Healing Disease with Rebirthing and Never Say Die. They've long been known for their uncompromising approach to breathwork and the resulting miraculous healings at their New Zealand practice, and are now widely considered teachers of teachers and human evolution specialists. And they are offering a 9-month advanced life mastery training, which is a deep dive into human transformation that's getting rave reviews. So I want to welcome you, David and Pauline, to the program, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you for a couple of hours about rebirthing breathwork and all the great work you guys are doing way on the other side of the world in New Zealand with a volcanic mountain in the background behind you. So, whenever I get ready to do a program with authors who've written books, I like to have read the book before I talk to them. And so I have your books, Never Say Die, The Making of a Healer, and Healing Disease with Rebirthing. And I was getting ready to, I've read them, and I was getting ready to reread them. And then I was like, well, actually, Never Say Die, I just read. And this is not my first reading of it. And I got this book later. The Healing Disease with Rebirthing, of course, I've had for a long time, and I've read it several times. And all of that just by way of saying that I have a pretty big library and I have a lot of rebirthing books in it. And some of them I've read once or twice, they're like, okay. But these two books are my go-to books for rebirthing breathwork. I really think these are important works. But let's, not everyone in my audience even knows what rebirthing breathwork is. So maybe just start out, give the folks like a simple definition of what is rebirthing breathwork and what is a rebirther. And let's start with that. What is it? What is rebirthing?
Right. That's a very hard question.
Yeah.
Me, rebirthing is a personal experience. And unless you do it, you can't really explain it, because it's all about feeling. It's all about releasing emotion. It's all about releasing trauma from your body, from your cells. So asking someone what is rebirthing feels to me like a pretty impossible question because it is a miracle and it does miraculous things. We personally have had many medically incurable diseases healed using this process.
And how did you get into rebirthing?
How did I get into it? I was very sick from the age of about 12 years old. And
oh, you look great now, though.
Thank you. And I was bedridden a lot of the time, in and out of hospitals. The doctors had no answers.
Wow.
One time they thought I had a brain tumor, so they investigated that and came up with nothing. So I was in a supermarket having my usual panic attack, and a friend noticed me,
Wow.
and she said, "You look terrible. Here's a card of a man that I think could help you." And when I looked at the card, it said psychologist.
Okay.
So it took me about a week
Okay.
to get the courage up to ring this psychologist, because I thought, well, she must think I'm crazy, because you only go to a psychologist when you're crazy.
You're so crazy, yeah.
So I finally made an appointment, and this psychologist was working in a medical center, but what he did was sit me in a chair and get me connecting my breathing. And he never told me he was rebirthing me. So I didn't know what. I just thought that he had miraculous powers. And suddenly I began hearing, and I had memories of being a very small child way back, and that was my first experience of rebirthing, was having this memory of falling in a burning hot bath and being in a coma for 7 days afterwards.
So that would traumatize anyone.
Yeah, so that was the first trauma. Yeah, as in feeling. I felt this burning feeling up my back one day, and my rebirther or psychologist used to say, just go with the feelings, just go with it. And I used to think, okay, well, when I got a feeling after being rebirthed, I thought, this is what he means. He means go with the feeling. So I did. And I went with this burning feeling up my back, and I laid on the couch, and I could feel myself going into coma, feeling like I was going back into the coma that I was in for 7 days after this burning. So that to me was an absolute...
Up until now, did you know about the coma?
I did. I knew about it. I knew about it. My mother had explained it to me. But this came up as in feeling, like I was going back through the feelings of the burning, the burning feeling in my body, plus the feeling of becoming comatized. So like I was about to go unconscious. I had that feeling.
Right.
I didn't go unconscious, but I had the feeling in my body that I was going unconscious. So something just said to me, things are happening in my body that has never happened to me ever before. So I have to continue this process. So even although at times I felt like he pulled the mat from under me, and I felt like I was never going to get up again. I felt, my God, he's asking me to get up after I feel like absolute death. So,
you survived.
I did survive. Yeah. So, but every time I got up, I became a stronger and better person than I'd ever been before. It was like I was going through a lot of mini deaths and rebirthed again. So I became a totally and completely different woman than you would never have recognized me if you knew me before rebirthing. And now you know me now, you would never know I was the same person. So rebirthing to me has been the miracle that happened in my life. And it just felt like a coincidence, although I don't believe in coincidence, that this woman should hand me this card, and this psychologist was practicing rebirthing under the table.
Right. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah. So as soon as they found out that the medical doctors found out he was practicing this peculiar breathing process, they kicked him out of their medical center. So he was severely punished because he told me that after patients had come to him, they didn't need the medical doctors anymore. And so he was getting punished for using a process.
Yeah, that wasn't popular if he's working in the medical sector.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
Yeah, that's right. So, but this guy's name was John Priest, of all names, and he certainly was a priest to me. He was a miracle man, and I am forever grateful to him. In fact, I rang him 20 years after I'd worked with him, and it was on Christmas Day, and I wanted to give him the gift of my gratitude to him changing my life completely using this breathing process. That is an absolute miracle.
And he like when you first went to see him, you didn't even know he was doing rebirth.
No.
How did you find out? How did you find out later
that he was doing rebirthing? I thought, well, I want to perform the miracle that he performed on me with other people. I want to become that healer. So I thought, well, he's a psychologist, so they must teach this at uni. So I joined uni, and I spent, are you there? We've lost him.
It's okay. Wait, he'll come back.
I'm still here. I stopped my videos just so that we have a better connection.
Okay.
Like, maybe we'll make this like, yeah, but continue. And like maybe talk a little, like I know you talk in your book about you worked with the doctor who was healed and was like reluctant to talk about the fact that rebirthing healed him. And you've got this psychologist, John Priest, who's doing rebirthing. And I think you said something in your book about all of the business went across the hall to the medical professional, quote unquote. So, talk a little bit about how this helps so many people, but it has such a hard time getting, or at least it did. I think it's getting a little better these days, getting accepted by the traditional power structures.
That's right. That's right. The doctor thought that he could use it in his medical practice. So if a patient came in with high blood pressure, he would say to them, well, tell me about the pressures in your life. And they would run a mile and, and go to his partner who was handing out the drugs. They wanted a quick fix. So it wasn't entirely the doctor's fault, that he eventually went back to handing out drugs. Because
quick fix and also easy out. That's one of the things that is really notable about your work. You're working with people who, in many cases, are right at death's door. And they have to make a commitment of facing their shadows and doing the work on themselves. And a lot of people would just rather pop a pill and not change their life at all. Just keep doing the same old thing they've always done. But when people are at death's door, they start getting serious about inner work and working on themselves. So, like when you're having people who are being healed through a process that requires them to be honest with themselves and face the truth about themselves, no matter the cost, and that it's always a lot. Most people will prefer to just continue to live the lie and take pills.
Exactly.
So talk a little bit about the when you're working with people that have, they're so sick that now they're ready to get serious, I guess. But even from your books, I can tell that you even have people who are like it's almost the end of the game for them, and you still have to push them to get serious. Like
Yeah.
how do you feel about, like, when you're working with people, what causes that intense attachment to continuing to live a lie and not be honest with yourself? Is that like just a human thing, or?
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
But we are mammals, Ray. Like cats and horses and dogs and apes. And part of being a mammal is you spend some time being completely merged with your mother inside a womb. And then you go through this massive trauma of experiencing this separation for the very first time. And for a mammal, it's very distressing to go through that separation. We never fully process it. And so what you see in the mammalian species is a tendency to form cultures of group identity, group bonding. And this is no less the case in humans. Human cultures form around the idea of a group, that we are predominantly part of a group, and ourselves as individuals takes a back seat. And for people to confront their shadows, even if they're in a lot of danger medically, even if they're under a lot of duress, they perceive that it's even more traumatic to question their membership in the group and the group's values than it is to confront their own pain. So we do see in a minority of individuals, they are willing to upset the apple cart of group identity, group consciousness. They are willing to break group norms, group rules, and start asking, who am I as an individual, and what am I really feeling? And, they dare to start, identifying as individuals rather than as just a cell in something bigger. And when they get to that point where they're willing to take those first defiant steps, that's when the healing's starting to become feasible. That's when people gain a safety to take the covers off and start examining the shadows and start draining out the swamp, so to speak. And when I was a client of Pauline's originally back in '94, and the first stuck out to me seeing Pauline as a client was just how safe and non-judged I felt in exposing my shadows to Pauline. And she was just like, yeah, I've seen all that before, however many times, and it's okay. And when you feel that kind of safety, you feel no more need to keep those shadows covered up. And, that alone is a massive contribution to the healing journey.
And wow, yeah, and just like creating a safe space. And I guess it's like we live in a culture of suppression because the group kind of wants everyone, we all agree as individual members of the group to go along to get along.
That's right. And the group has its own agenda. The group wants us to be simply temporary, short-lived cells. And the group has its own consciousness, its own awareness, its own perception on things. And so individuals who go down the path of claiming their individuality and asserting their individuality are going to get some pushback from the group, whether that group is their own families, blood families, or their own communities, their workplaces, what have you. It's quite a bold move, really, for somebody to even decide that it's okay to take the covers off and start looking at shadows. And yet, when people end up in a space of distress, and it's not just the distress of medically challenging illnesses, it can be simply the distress of boredom, the distress of not fitting into the peer group, the distress of not being able to function harmoniously as a cell in the big hive mind, and a feeling that you're the only one around you who can't fit in easily. And you go for a while thinking, hey, there's something wrong with me, blaming yourself, trying harder and harder to fit in. And that's a huge part of the revenue stream of the big pharmaceuticals. They come up with all kinds of drugs to help facilitate suppression of feelings and help facilitate people fitting in. And that way, a lot of the misfits can delay the inevitable and, delay the work that's needing to be done. And they may even go to the grave with that. The body bags fill up every single day full of people who don't really fit in, but have made themselves fit in through suppression. But there are others, and it just happens largely by chance, coincidence, a mixture of circumstances, who can't fit in. The drugs don't work. All the various soothing constructs don't work. The various, religious frameworks, socio-cultural frameworks don't work.
Alcohol.
And even alcohol
drugs.
stops working. And life starts to suck. And then we go looking. And when you go looking, plenty of stuff on offer. There's the great worm in the sky. That's a really popular offering, and promises without a shred of evidence that if you follow certain rules now and possibly part with certain amounts of money now, then you're going to get a guaranteed place in the great worm in the sky. That sells really well and makes massive bucks. What doesn't sell as well is the path of discovering who we are as individuals and, unraveling all of the hooks and tentacles that have kept us enmeshed in a matrix of numerous different hive minds. And we notice on our trainings, there's quite a connection between the progress of our students and the cultures from which they originate. Students originating from more collectivist cultures struggle a lot with our teaching. Students originating from more individualist cultures tend to find the training more straightforward, and the challenges are nowhere near as insurmountable.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. Being in New Zealand, I guess you get people from like China or Asia, and then also Europe and the U.S. I would guess, probably California, Americans from California, and then people from East Asia, I guess, because you're like kind of like centrally located for that.
That's right. And we also find international people are much easier to work with. We had a Brazilian guy do one of our last trainings, and he was an absolute star. He is right out there now promoting breath work wherever, all over the world. He is really a celebrity, and he was just so amazing. He was just so ready for our training.
And that there's a factor that supports that, and that is that if you're a migrant in New Zealand, you've originated overseas and come here, you already have a proven track record of getting off your butt, going through all of the visa and nationality and relocation hassles. It is a pain in the butt to move to another country. And these are people who have proven that they can go through that huge barrier and get here, and that alone supports a capability for them to get some growth out of this process.
Mm-hmm.
You're sort of like you're pre-selected.
Correct.
People are just by virtue of being there. That's really helpful too, I think.
So I call it a positive selection bias.
Yeah, that's the word. Yeah, positive selection bias.
We are at the stage now where we interview every prospective student to see if they're ready. Because if they're not ready, they're going to run away after the first couple of weekends, because we challenge every block that we can see in that person. And we get permission from our trainings. We say to them, do you want us to call you on any block that we can see? Or do you want us to just let ride. And every time our students say, no, please call us on it. If you see something that needs to go, please let us know.
Right.
So, and so we're away. We really are. We have our detections on any block that we can find in a person, and they will not leave our training with one intact that we can see. So that's what makes our training.
That's an awesome. That's an awesome guarantee. And in addition to offering a safe space for people to come to know their blocks and face them, like it's more than just you tell them you have a block in this area. You help them see exactly what the block is and how it works and how it's interfering with their life. And so because you've done all this work, like I really think of rebirthing breathworkers, people who are a little bit ahead or a lot ahead of the people they're working with. And so you've done what you're asking them to do. And so you create a safe space by being non-judgmental. You create a safe space by being non-judgmental, but you also, on like a subconscious level, it's communicated to them, I did this, so you can do it.
Absolutely. We never ask of our students anything that we're not willing to do ourselves. Like we take our students to the sea, and it's a pretty cold rebirth in the sea with a snorkel for an hour. And we've done that. I've done it hundreds of times. David's done it a lot of times too. So we never ask of them anything that we haven't already achieved.
And when you're just getting back to the whole culture of suppression and the various coping mechanisms, like the religious promise of a great womb in the sky afterwards. So all of these are things like that for people are like a delaying tactic where I'll put up with this miserable life now and in the hopes of a reward in the future. But sometimes people, I think most people at some point, anybody who's halfway conscious, at some point in their life will say, is this it? Is this all there is? And
like birth, work, and death.
Yeah, a very nihilistic friend of mine years ago summed up life in 4 words: birth, school, work, death. And he made the conclusion that that's all there is, so he might as well just let loose and have a good time and not make any constructive plans for the future. Now, Ray, are you still hearing us?
Yeah. I'm still hearing you.
Good.
Okay, now the culture of suppression, when we pinned
but
that...
I didn't catch the name. I'm not familiar with it. You said that somebody said life is birth,
school,
work,
and death.
School.
Hmm.
And who was that?
Sorry?
That was a friend.
Who said?
Time when I circulated in among more nihilistic social circles in Sydney.
You used to be like a rock and roll musician or something, correct?
Well, I've been a musician and in amongst several circles, you know, jazz bands, metal bands, funk, soul, hard rock, and I've done some travels. Same as Pauline's done some travels.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. So you were saying about the culture of suppression.
Yes. Now, it's very easy and it's quite common when people start on a path like this to train up and get skilled and think, wow, I've got to go out there and heal the whole world and everybody's got to receive this good news. And strangely, it can find a large audience quite quickly, and you can find your diary filling up fast. But there comes a time fairly soon after that where your bookings start to fade, and you realize that the lens through which you've been seeing the process has become unsustainable. And you know, the different lenses we take on the process as we go on change. So I guess our first level,
Yeah.
I've got to heal society. I've got to heal the whole world. And then get into kind of a frustration and victim phase of like, why are people resisting this? They should get this. And then there's
They
like,
love it.
then there's a disillusionment phase of like, oh, why even try? And this is just no good. People aren't ever going to get it. So what's the point? And then there comes a point of peace where, you know, I would call it glorious equilibrium. And that's in realizing that the culture of suppression has brought us the comfortable houses we live in. It's brought us technology. It's brought us the light bulb. It's brought us the internet over which we are now communicating. And that works for many or most individuals. And without this culture of suppression in place, it's questionable whether human society could work at large scale. But there are those of us who decide or feel that we cannot continue to sublimate ourselves into hive minds, and that we have to embark on our own personal journey of gradually untangling the commitments and connections to the culture of suppression and start learning how to unsuppress. So then we get to a place with the process where we start seeing it as less of a therapy and certainly less of a mission, and much more of operating an esoteric school of sorts. So we are actually very similar to the ashrams out in the isolated areas of the Himalayas, whereas instead of operating in isolation, divorced from society, our ashram, our asceticism, our esoteric teaching is completely based and immersed in urban, contemporary Western culture. And we work in that context to help people in the process of disengaging their collectivist obligations. But nowadays, we don't have any attachment to wanting to get it out there to everybody. You know, we've hit a place of peace, recognizing that most people are going to be happy taking the drugs, happy engaging in the suppressive behaviors, happy dreaming of the big sky worm, happy being part of their various social, cultural affiliations, and that's okay for them. And in fact, they do beautiful things. They provide us with lovely stuff that we can buy online or buy in stores. They provide us with opportunities to, you know, work in avenues when we're not actually directly teaching, and we're very grateful for that. But there are also those who don't fit in, and they want to pursue a path of growth. They want to pursue self-actualization. And for those people, we are at their service.
That's it's a valid point. I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate it. I don't know if this is a difference of opinion or if I just want your comment on this. It also seems to me that it should be possible for individuals to be happy without having to like undermine or threaten or break away from the group, in the sense that really what people just want to be truthful. They want to live their lives truthfully. I don't know that I would consider them to be misfits that don't fit in, but just people who are no longer able to put up with all the lies. There's like almost a physical revulsion against going along with the life. And it shows up not just in, like you were saying, physical illness. It could be emotional stress, disquiet, stuff that, like, in order to, like if you have early childhood trauma because your parents were not enlightened gurus and did the best they could but kind of traumatized you a little bit, to suppress that and forget that it happened and pretend like everything is hunky-dory when it really isn't, puts a lot, it forces the individual to like live a lie. And I think sometimes people just can't do that anymore, and they just want to live truthfully, but that doesn't necessarily mean they no longer have anything to do with their family or their community. They just are trying to maybe set a higher standard for their community to stop living a lie and to live from a place of truthfulness and honesty.
That's a great point, Ray, and I can feel in my heart, you know, the bridge building perspective you're taking there. That's very much true. Now, somebody who doesn't respond as well to the suppressive options is going to ask questions. They are going to want truth, and it's inevitable they're going to hit many places of hideous cognitive dissonance, where they're contradictions within themselves and beyond themselves, and they're going to seek ways to remedy those contradictions. And to a point, a lot of these people are going to be able to exert a positive influence on those around them. But typically what you're going to find is that the hive mind will accommodate that to an extent, but it will also start to push back if the hive mind feels its own infection challenged. And so that individuals will encounter some resistance here and there, but it depends on how the individual pursues their path and, you know, how they go about starting to find their own resolutions to these conflicts. Like, one of the conflicts, for example, is the conflict that is the premise that it's not okay to criticize your parents. That hits a lot of cultures. So you've got the premise it's not okay to criticize your parents, and then you've got the premise of my parents abused me terribly, and you know, I have to hold this abuse down inside me, and somewhere inside you, you know the abuse is making you sick. So what do you do? How do you resolve that?
Right. Right.
I think of rebirthing as the ultimate truth process.
Okay.
So that's it in a nutshell for me. It's all about truth. If you're trying to keep the lie inside and you're doing this breathing process, it's pretty impossible.
Well, talk about the relationship then between the breathing process where you're bringing in this energy. So you've got, you're, as you said, you're keeping the lie inside by holding this negative energy contracted and in suppression down in yourself. And then you bring in this breathwork energy, which won't allow that contracted energies to stay down there. And so on an energetic level, people can process the lies and come back to truth that way. But then you also are working with them with words in terms of like concepts and pointing out their blocks. And do people, in your experience, do the two things together or one at a time? Like, does the breathing take care of some things and then the talking takes care of other things, or does the breathing facilitate how well the talk makes the talking work better?
Talk therapies have more of a place late in the process, not early. It's very hard to trigger a blockage purely by talking. Sometimes a very skilled talk-based therapist might be able to pick the moments here and there and say a couple of words that trigger an intense reaction and trigger a blockage to release. But we find that's so hit and miss, it's so hard to get a result that way. We get far more consistent success with the breath work, because when somebody is connecting their breathing in a prolonged way, now there are 3 elements in a connected breathing session. 1 is the connection of the breathing. 2 is the relaxation, laying back with closed eyes. And the 3rd is staying present and conscious. Now, I realized a little while ago that we do those 3 things all the time in our lives. But what's interesting, Ray, is that we never do those 3 things simultaneously. For example, you can be connecting your breathing and fully awake and conscious if you are running a marathon. But in that case, you're not laying back with your eyes closed. You can be connecting your breath and laying back and relaxed completely if you're in bed asleep, but you're not conscious. Or you can be laying back and conscious, but not connecting your breath. And in that case, you're not going to be triggering release either. So it's when you put those 3 things together and sustain them over an hour, that's when you're starting to have the opposite effect to the effect of things like alcohol, drugs, obsessive behaviors, addictions, food, and so on. And you're starting to undo, the various suppressive mechanisms that we normally would otherwise engage in. And that's when we get exposed to those inner conflicts and inner contradictions. And that's when emotional tension's going to rise to the surface. And with the safety of a rebirther, you feel it's actually okay to let these conflicts come up to the surface and out of your body. And it's a strange feeling because we're not used to that. We're used to other people being offended by our emotional releases. We're not used to people being able to support them and facilitate them and encourage them. That's what blew me away so much with Pauline.
That she was able to hold a non-judgmental space.
Exactly.
But Pauline, do you see yourself as like what you're holding this non-judgmental space, and not everyone is coming for breath work. And this gets back to what David was saying about you're kind of at a peaceful place within yourself where like I guess you're talking about the mastering life training. It's more like it's become like an esoteric school, similar to the real ashrams that are kind of hidden away in the Himalayas, not the tourist places. And so you're not just offering healing to desperately ill people that are coming to these trainings, this esoteric school, want to really kind of like get clean of all the psychic garbage and be at a higher level of cleaner, more spiritually pure frequency and vibration, that this non-judgmental loving space that you hold for them is probably a key component of allowing them to get to that place. You have to feel pretty safe to be to like let go of all of this kind of like psychic and emotional garbage that we all tend to carry.
Absolutely. And trust plays a huge part. When our students know that they can trust us, they feel safer to let go of their emotional garbage.
Yeah, and when you know that you can trust in, absolute, privacy and confidentiality, and know that you're in an environment where you're not going to be judged, especially with what some these days call the proliferation of cancel culture throughout society. you know, there's quite a popular trend now to digging up something 8 years in someone's past and using it to destroy their career in the present. We go completely the opposite way. Now, society has a tendency to judge people from where they've been and what they've done. We assess and evaluate people not from that, but from where they're going. That, to us, is the measure of a person, where they're going and how they're working with, you know, the inventory of past events and experiences. So somebody could even be a past mass murderer, rapist, terrorist, whatever. And as long as they are making authentic efforts to confront themselves and to dismantle the mechanics that led to their dysfunctional behavior before, that to us puts them higher than somebody who goes to church every Sunday and who's never hurt a fly.
Okay, I can see that. And some people are not, the dysfunction doesn't have to be as severe as that. And so I was thinking also that your esoteric school, everyone, until they've started work on themselves, has a dysfunctional life. People may not be on, on the edge of living on the street because they have a severe drug addiction problem, but they might be encountering, my relationships don't work. Everybody that I have to deal with gets mad at me and I get mad at them. I never have enough money. I never have enough time. I'm always tired. I'm miserable at work. I'm miserable to be around. So it's sort of like you can be dysfunctional in a very real way and have a very unhappy life as a result without necessarily having to be like at the extreme. But when people realize that, I think a lot of times when it gets really bad, you're forced to do something about it. Most people live lives of quiet desperation. It's bad, but it's not bad enough to make them want to take action and do something. But I think what brings people to places like your center is to just finally getting to the point where they realize, I don't have to live like this. I could be happy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are some significant barriers also to people finding their way to us. And one of them is that whatever mix or stack of dysfunctionalities a person has, like the kind of things that you've mentioned, it's really easy to find a group of people with similar dysfunctionality to help you normalize it and socialize it so that you can make the bad relationships right. You can make the poverty right. You can make the addictions right because you've got this peer group of people around you who are stuck in that dysfunctionality as well. And then you can even form this hive mind perspective that people who don't have your dysfunctionalities are, weird or wrong. So that society has amazing facilities to help people accommodate and normalize their dysfunctionalities.
That's a really interesting point. I never thought about that. Yeah, you can make anything right if you find the right group.
Especially with Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and Twitter now, you can attract like-minded dysfunctionalities at the drop of a hat.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us a little bit about this 9 months training that you're offering, that you're doing. Is this is in person, live, and not virtual? Is that correct, or is it both?
We've had some experiences of virtual. I don't feel confident at this point that it can deliver the benefits and the impact and the depth of live face-to-face. Like people even book flights from remote cities to come to the training for the weekend. They Airbnb in the local city and then they fly back home. We've discussed it a few times. We thought, could we actually do it? I don't feel confident we could deliver even a fraction of what we deliver in a face-to-face situation.
Online.
Well, yeah. I mean, Pauline, yeah, with the work that I mean, with what you, as you described, the way you're working with people, it would sound like you would, it's going to work better live and in person because you're working with them in a really intimate way. But also, it's really flattering to you guys that people are flying in just for the weekend just to come to your training. And that's like, that's nine weekends for 9 months.
Yeah, that's right. We have considered doing online courses, but it just could not work. We've come to the conclusion that we work on such a personal level and we work with energy. So, you know, having them here is of the utmost importance.
Talk a little bit about that energy. When you're doing the breath work and this energy starts flowing through people, what do you think that energy is? How do you describe it? How do you see it?
Well, it has to be God energy. And I'm quite a fan of Babaji, and I feel quite often channeled by him, channeled by his energy. So I just feel huge energy come through me. And sometimes I don't even know how I know what I know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's so profound. Our students describe coming for the weekend with us as the feeling of being on a spaceship.
Wow.
Like they've left the world and come into our world, and that's how they describe it, that it's just like being on a spaceship. Like, it's so different to mainstream society.
Yeah, that's yeah. The I could see that because the energy of the environment. I mean that. I mean it is a confront. People come from the regular mainstream society, and there's certain expectations and like groupthink, and a level of emotional defensiveness, and come into this environment of openness and it's like a whole different set of priorities. It's like what's important in the mainstream world, in your world, my world, our world, is kind of like that's kind of silly, and we value like spiritual purification and
yeah. Well, I see all of my students like my own children. They're just like being my babies that I'm rearing from the time they enter this course until they leave. And it's quite sad to see them leave, because I feel like I'm sending them out into the wilderness. I feel like my job is done after the 9 months. And it's just like I have 5 children of my own. And I remember the last 2 leaving home, and it was very, very painful for me to adjust to not being that mother anymore. And it's no different sending my students out after the training ends. So we have the most beautiful graduation process that happens at the 9-month cut-off point, and where there's so much love in the room, the house just about lifts off its boundaries. So it's a very, very
almost takes off like a spaceship. Your house almost takes off like a spaceship.
It does at the end, yeah. It's like the big crescendo at the end.
What I love too is how every student has their own individual growth trajectory. And it's very rare that you'd have two women sitting next to each other among the students, and one woman's growth requires her to become more demure sexually. And it's like, you want to say to her, get thee to a nunnery. And the woman next to her is of such a repressed background. What you want to say to her is, get thee to a pole dancing class.
So they look,
One path that suits everybody. Part of our work is learning to get the hell out of the way. So that,
and let the students learn from each other.
sorry?
Like the trainees learn from each other. Like it's not just coincidence that those two women are next to each other in the class. So you get the hell out of the way and let the universe come through.
Absolutely.
Well, when
Yeah.
you're starting to ignite the flames of inner awareness. Now, we talked about lies before and the culture of suppression. And, you know, I want to actually put the elephant in the room now and name one of the greatest of all lies. And that is the lie that we are conscious and the lie that we have free will and conscious choice. Because it's one of the most humbling and momentarily crushing realizations is just how mechanical we are, how much of a machine we are, how little actual free will there is. Yeah, part of the culture of suppression, part of hive mind mainstream society, one of their most important premises is getting people to believe that they are free wills. And then that gives society the freedom to hold people to account for breaching the rules. And it's woven into the justice system, it's woven into religions, it's woven into social and moral code. But when you make it okay to accept that our free will is extremely limited, but through a process of emotional release and guided self-observation and an environmentally supportive energy, that people can feel safe to realize they're not free will beings, they're not sovereigns, they are machines, but with every block we release, a mechanical, robotic, prosthetic part of ourself suddenly goes away and is replaced by a human part of ourself. A piece of ingrained programming gets crashed and removed and replaced with our own agency, our own capacity for choice and self-determination. And it's not an all or nothing thing. It happens in stages. And I've used the analogy of like a democratic Congress or a House of Parliament, as they call them here, where you as you are, like your real self, may only have 6 seats in a parliament of 100. And like, how many laws and bills can you pass when you only have 6 seats? And every other seat is just full of chaos. And you feel like you're at a party full of children after they've gobbled down energy drinks. It's just impossible. But with every block you release, it's like you gain another seat in your Congress or your Parliament, and you gain a bit more ability to influence the choices and the actions made in your life. And then we're aiming for the point where we've got a controlling majority in the Parliament, and that to us is an indication of real agency, real free will. And it doesn't come without a lot of work and without a lot of confrontation, because it's unbelievable just how much of our behavior, perceptions, and so forth is mechanical. It's just a whole bunch of software that's been downloaded into us through our DNA, through our epigenetics, through our conditioning, through our womb trauma, through our birth trauma, through our family socializing, through the socialization at school, through cultural values and so on. we are up to here with other people's software, and we've got to learn to turn that off. We've got to learn, first of all, to realize that it's even there in the first place, because we think it's us, whereas really all that programming is a parasite. So we are gradually dismantling, that code, and, replacing it with our own genuine, enlightened self-awareness and capacity for action. And
choice, free will.
Right. I mean, I think one of the, before I became a rebirthing breath worker, I obviously was a client. And during my first 10 sessions, one of the most amazing things that happened was I saw some early childhood conditioning that got put into me in preschool. And then I saw how I had been living according to this rule that I made up in response to a situation for my entire life. And I had no idea that rule was there. So it's like you have this programming and you're blindly obeying it and you have no idea it's there. And then just seeing it, that was like 80% of getting rid of it. Because
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head there. That's an absolute truth, where you've made it part of who you are. You've made it part of your identity, and you're living out this lie constantly until you're awakened and you can see it. And that's what this breathing process does. It awakens you to be able to see things that you have never seen before. And you believe that it's you, and it's not. It's never been you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like an awakening process.
Yeah.
And awakening like one block at a time. Because probably if we could awaken people all their blocks at once, I think they'd run screaming for the hills.
Well, it would probably kill you. You'd probably get off the planet. It would be too much. I've been doing this now for 45 years, and I'm still doing it. It's awesome to me, and it never stops amazing me. Like with everybody that goes through a rebirthing session, I'm just awestruck. It's just the most incredible miracle, and you could never believe that the breath could do such miracles.
Well, the breath plus the presence and the consciousness of somebody with you, supporting you.
Of the rebirther, yeah.
Because if you put somebody on a mattress breathing, and you have someone sitting with them who is full up with their own suppressions and is not accommodating of emotional release,
you will block them. Yeah, you will block that person from reaching where they need to go.
Yeah, at the training center, if somebody had never had a session, they were not allowed to see a session until they had one.
That's right.
That's really good.
Yeah, that is a good rule.
It's like we often joke about some of the popular movies like Fight Club. If this is your first night coming, you have to fight. It's like, if this is your first time coming to Breath Club, you have to breathe.
Yeah, we don't allow anyone to just sit and watch if they haven't had a breath session. We send them off and say, we'll come back when the client has finished their session. But we don't allow relatives to sit in on the session unless they're doing it themselves.
That brings up an interesting point. Oftentimes, I think you mentioned it in your book, people who are desperately ill are prevented by their family from changing because their family needs them to stay and be the way they are, the way they know them.
Exactly.
And I'm amazed at how often I'll have somebody, when I have one, parents will want their children to come, but I want the parents first. Wives will come, but I want the husband to come also. It's like, it makes no sense to do one member of the family household and everybody else stays the same. But it's always, it seems in my, maybe it's my consciousness, but it seems like in my reality, it's always the one person who's all gung-ho for growth and the other one's not so much.
Yes, yes, that's right. Families are quite frightened of the person changing.
Yeah.
I even had one woman who said she would rather her son died than change.
Wow.
Mm.
And why do they? And the change was for the best. So why are they so reluctant to embrace? Is it like because it's confronting them on their stuff?
Yeah, and a lot of families are into big ownership deals. Like, I own you.
Okay. Yeah.
Parents, like, you have borrowed my DNA, so therefore you owe me. And
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that goes on.
That is. I have seen that. I was fortunate enough that wasn't a dynamic as I was growing up. We had our own. That wasn't one of them. But now that you mentioned it, I realize I have come across that. Yeah, people, you're like you're family first. You're more like your job is to carry on the name and do what we tell you, and
Right.
you can pick up a little bit of happiness along the way. That's great, but don't count on it.
Yeah, that's right. And don't succeed more than we have.
Right. That in terms of prosperity consciousness, that's
Yeah,
a big.
it's okay to succeed, but not go beyond. There's a glass ceiling there, and
Yeah.
a lot of people really feel that. Yeah.
An example is a father who's made millions of dollars in his industry, but his marriage is crap. His son will grow up often feeling that it's okay for him to make a ton of money, but it's not okay for him to have a successful marriage. So there'll be subtle sabotages that get in there through the son's selection of a mate, or through behavior the son acts out in the marriage, or through various other things. The software inside the son will act out in any way it can to sabotage that marriage.
Like patterns.
Yeah. Self-sabotage is a big one.
And what's really weird is that when we engage in sabotaging behaviors, we actually feel that we are freely choosing these behaviors and that we have overwhelmingly valid reasons for those behaviors, and that we are doing the right thing at the right time. And if others don't handle it, then it's their issue, they're wrong. And, then we get into victim consciousness when things don't work as we want. And we don't realize how much of what we call I is just a damn machine inside us.
Yeah, so you're not you think what you're doing is your own free will choice and it's for the best, and you don't really see that you're only following your programming, and your programming is you have to sabotage your marriage because that's your family pattern and you're not allowed to do better.
That's right.
And that's part of how the hive mind works, because not only is the deeper programming unmentionable, but the unmentionability of the programming is itself unmentionable. It's like you just do not go there.
Oh, right. So we keep it hidden by even refusing to look at it. So that's kind of like the Course in Miracles talks about the ego keeps you looking at everything outside, blaming everything on everything outside to keep you from looking inside. And you don't want to look inside because you think there's this big ugly monster in there and you're afraid to face it. But if you actually looked at it, you would see it's only the love of God. There is no big ugly monster. There's no boogeyman in the closet. And
well, the boogeyman in the
Absolutely
closet
right.
just simply needs, first of all, acknowledgement, and then second, acceptance, and third, gentle retraining.
Gentle retraining. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And some are quite robust retraining at times. So then what we're calling the monster will interact with its environment and, get experiences from its environment. And by being allowed to come out and, do the trial and error learning process, it will find its niche. It'll find the area where it's no longer criminal or horrible or obnoxious. It'll find the spaces where it is brilliant.
Mm.
So if people wanted to get your training is coming up in October. I mean, right? Your 9 weekend. So that's like a weekend, all day Saturday, all day Sunday.
Yep.
Mm. Yeah, we start at 9 o'clock and we go through till about 7:30, both days. So it's full on.
Full on, like
right from the start.
And it's quite subtle. Like sometimes on the surface, it'll feel like a very mundane conversation. It'll feel like we're discussing pretty easy, simple concepts and nothing's really happening. And yet there are unbelievable undercurrents, which are disrupting people's sense of selves. And that's one big part of our methodology is cyclic death and rebirth, and the ability to go through psychological deaths.
well, probably going away and coming back is a key part of that process. They might think nothing's happening, but then when they're away and something comes up in their regular life at work or at home or the supermarket even, they'll be like saying, "Oh, this is what I do."
That's right. That's right. Yeah. There's no such thing as a failed rebirthing session. As long as you connect your breath well high into your chest for an hour, at least an hour, you've had a successful session. And even if it feels like nothing has happened, wait for it. Because when you go away, all hell can break loose. Everything can happen.
How do people get a hold of you as far as like if they wanted to do, well, for whatever reason, but I'm thinking especially about your 9-month training coming up.
Yeah, well, they can go to our website. It's
humanevolution.nz or humanevolution.nz, I think the North Americans pronounce it as.
Yeah, I was gonna fix that for you. Yeah, humanevolution.nz. Okay.
yeah.
And that explains what we do and our courses. Now, something I wanted to add, just so we don't come across as puritanical monks and nuns, is that within the intensely cathartic and ascetic and spiritually impactful work, we also set it in a context of indulgence, meaning that partake of all the pleasures of the world, all the pleasures in your life. Enjoy good food, enjoy sex, enjoy money, enjoy career success, enjoy great friendships and relationships, enjoy as much fun as you can pack in. It's what you bring to those activities that matters. It's how you do those things. It's how you look at someone's eyes when you're making love to them. It's how you process that sip of wine when you take it in. Are you using the wine to numb off, or are you using the refinement of the wine to elevate your consciousness? Similar to, if you're on a high-speed motorbike hooning around the corners at, 150 miles an hour, it's like be present to that and make it a growthful experience rather than an experience of wanting to null off feeling.
Well, so let's talk about one of the biggest conditionings that people have is the belief that death is inevitable. And so, like the idea of physical immortality, I heard someone once told me the earth is really talking about enjoying life on earth from a heightened perspective. The earth is really heaven, and death is so that people who haven't figured that out yet can leave. Uh, like so, and when you bring in this energy, like this energy, you called it God. You talked about your connection to Babaji, and it's also like a life force energy. And you know, Babaji told Leonard Orr once that if you keep breathing, you won't die, or something like,
Right. Well, you can't if you keep.
right. So if you bring this energy, this life force energy in, like, how do you see that whole relationship between the idea that the world is an illusion and we're supposed to leave as soon as possible, or it's heaven or hell, depending on how we are perceiving it, the lens that we're perceiving it through, and the possibility of keeping this life force energy flowing through us so that physical immortality, which is like the ultimate anti-mainstream belief, becomes a reality for us instead of just going along with the idea that everybody has to die.
Okay, I'll set a historical context on that. Let's rewind more than a century to the mid to late 19th century, when people on the fringes were exploring the idea of human aviation. Now, you could go anywhere and anyone would tell you that if God meant man to fly, he would have given him wings. And people tried making kites, they tried making gliders, they tried making big mechanical wings that they could flap, and everyone failed. And back in that particular span of time, it was indisputably real that any attempt at flight is utter stupidity. And there was plenty of evidence to back that, plenty of experience to back that. You were nuts if you aspired to fly. But then along came a German inventor by the name of Otto Lilienthal, and he actually built a working human glider, and he demonstrated numerous times gliding successfully and flying safely. Now, back then, he didn't have any means of propulsion. That was not to come until later with the Wright brothers. But until those three inventors made those milestone steps, there was every evidence to claim and to assert that flight of humans was a ridiculous idea. And then suddenly that changed. So in terms of human physical immortality, I think we're at that point now where there are crazy, eccentric, pioneering people trying their hardest. And anybody who attempts to attain physical immortality in their physical life and doesn't actually attain it, if they actually leave their body, it is not evidence of the impossibility of physical immortality. It just simply means that they personally did not succeed, but it does not rule out that somebody else may come along later and succeed. Now, physical immortality is being pioneered on multiple fronts, through epigenetics, through spiritual disciplines, through clean living disciplines. I mean, for example, calorie reduction is a proven method of lifespan extension, and that goes in human life to having long periods of the day without food. That is proven to increase lifespan. So, but you raise a good point, Ray, saying that it is one of the most antinomian pursuits one can ever think of, the most defiant efforts one can ever embark on to try and live forever, because it completely disrupts the hive mind's premises. The hive mind holds that we are cells of a temporary lifespan, and the hive mind requires us to die. Nature means that we are dust. So embarking on physical immortality means pursuing the extremely unnatural.
Well, it's like Roger Banneker in the 4-Minute Mile, right? I mean, prior to, it was like a hard physical limitation. Human beings cannot run faster than 4 minutes, a mile faster than 4 minutes. That was like,
Right. And they did.
with their whole heart. It was like a physical. And then as soon as Roger Bannister did it, the next year, it was like 4 other guys did it.
That's right.
Broke that limitation, that mental
Right.
limitation. So
That's
we just
exactly right. I see that physical immortality as the very reason I incarnated. And I see myself as a teacher of physical immortality. And it makes I'm feeling quite griefy at the moment because it's overwhelming to me, because it's my purpose for being here. And I just see this planet as a university to achieving physical immortality. And if you believe in reincarnation, why the hell would you keep coming back? Because you know how to die. You know, you've done it so often. You know all about death. But the only thing you haven't learned yet is how to stay alive. So to me, the very purpose of coming back is to give ourselves another chance, is to try harder. And so that's what I do. I try harder. So nothing is impossible. Anything that is asked of me to achieve physical immortality, I'm there. If it means exercising, if it means diet, if it means take supplements, whatever I know is going to prolong this body and keep it healthy, I'm there. I do it. So it just does not make sense to me. It does not make sense. The only thing that makes sense to me is that we are here to learn how to stay alive.
I guess it's about it, whether you see it, it's about incorporating the physical body into the life of the spirit. It's about whether you see a hard dividing line between the spirit and the body.
Absolutely.
Both creations of God, and so why do we say one is great and the other one's a piece of garbage to be disposed of as quickly as possible?
That's right. That's right. It's a matter of teaming the immortal spirit with the physical. And once you can achieve bringing those two together with no separation, that the body is as spiritual as the spirit itself, once you can blend those two together, you are immortal. You've achieved immortality. So to me, it doesn't feel that hard. It doesn't. I think we've made it hard because we're like sheep. We're following each other into the grave.
Yeah, again, it's the 4-minute mile.
Yeah.
It's death is very, very natural, you know, within the construct of hive mind society. It's natural, normal, and right for them. If you buy into the premise that the hive itself is what matters, then, you know, everyone has an obligation to die, and everyone has an obligation to hand on, you know, their learnings and their wisdom to, you know, new incoming members. And that's okay at that stage. But it's also okay to choose to make yourself the first premise rather than the hive. And when you make yourself the first premise, what you're thinking then is, hey, this body works. I like this body. Damn, I don't want to lose it. I'm having a good time here. And I would like to keep this body indefinitely. And it's a funny duality in society. Like that comes up over and over in so much popular culture and literature. And one of the great examples is The Man from Earth, a wonderful movie of a guy who simply by genetic chance is automatically physically immortal and lives through thousands of years of human history. And then you get movies like those, what's that, that Scottish movie about the immortals who fight to the death?
Oh,
Highlander, thank you.
Highlander.
Bad lapse of memory, but that's another one. And then you get allusions to a source of immortality that requires you to be isolated from society. I saw another movie where people could be immortal, but only by drinking the water of a particular creek in a particular town, and so forth. So immortality is discussed on one hand, but it's always framed as something that will never be real for humans. But right now, we've got billionaires investing in telomere technology and genetic technology and numerous other therapies, stem cells, and numerous other technologies to try and extend their own lives. And it's only now that it's starting to become more and more acceptable to discuss the very real possibility. One thing we notice on our training courses is when you do bring up the notion of physical immortality, it's amazing how much buried emotional trauma tends to start flooding up to the surface. And this is quite amazing.
The courses go wild when we teach the physical immortality weekend.
It's
the
like
energy in the room is through the roof.
And you realize then that the belief in death's inevitability is one of the most powerful suppressive techniques of all. And if you start to question the inevitability of death, then people think, oh my God, like what's going on here? They start feeling the burdens they're carrying and want to shrug them off. Like if you're carrying a huge backpack full of bricks and you know, and you can see the end in sight, if you can see a point up at the top of the next hill and you know you can shrug off those bricks, then it's okay. You will take each next step and make that all right because everyone else is doing it. But if you are told that there is no point where you're going to shrug off the bricks and it's not going to be an easy relief, then you're going to say, what the hell? Like, how do I get these bricks out? Someone help me here. And you get one brick out at a time and you start lightening your load. And that's the way you're going to handle it. But something, just on this note, something that really hit me hard a few years ago is the realization that when a human culture forms, you know, from a settlement of humans, individuals in an area, when they start to aggregate into a culture and form a hive mind, one of the very first foundation stones of a culture is a set of constructs around death. Because when you get when you get constructs in place to explain death and make it acceptable, then you're giving people tools to cope with grief from losing loved ones.
Right, and also it's like the point of death is not to just live. I'm sorry. The point of physical immortality is not to live forever as a miserable, old, wretched, unhappy human being. So you need breath work to process your stuff so that you can begin to enjoy happiness and living in this world. If you use breath work to become happy in this world, then you naturally want to keep living in this world. But if you're miserable, then you naturally are looking for the nearest exit.
Yeah, that's true.
That's right. You take the pain out and then you think, well, why the hell die? And it starts to become insufficient reason simply that everyone else is dying.
Yeah, there's actually a book written by someone, I forget who now, called Why Die?
No, I don't remember. I don't know either. But yeah, that's a good question. The way I look at it is, like one thing that Leonard Orr said to me once was that he needed to take some time off because if, as the founder of physical immortality in the West or a leading proponent of it, if he were to die, that would be really bad for the physical immortality movement. And I said, well, see, that's not going to work because you're like obligating yourself to fulfilling the expectations of other people. And he said, don't you think I know that? I work on it all the time. Some days I'm really fine with it. And then other days, not so much. And, but the so learning from that, I look at it for myself. I believe it's possible. I believe other people have done it. I believe I could do it, that it's possible for me. If I do it, great. If I don't, that'll be fine too. It's like I'll make my best effort, but I'm not gonna be like attached to the outcome. Whatever happens is what happens, but I'm fine either way. And the placebo effect, people take sugar pills and get better because of the power of the mind. And hypochondriacs can give themselves an actual disease simply by reading about it in a medical book because of the power of the mind. So what earthly good, is it to go around thinking you're going to die? It's better to go around thinking I'm going to live forever.
Very unhealthy. It's
Yeah.
very unhealthy to think that someone or something is there wanting to wipe you out.
Yeah, God doesn't have a divine meat axe in the sky
No.
to kill us all.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Gary.
Safety. That's why you're probably having that huge energy in your trainings when you introduce them to this idea, because now they've always unconsciously felt unsafe their whole lives. Like at any moment, God could drop the divine meat axe and kill me. And then you point up to the possibility that no, that may not be true. And it's like a huge relief.
That's right.
I mean, I remember a cartoon by the very popular American cartoonist Gary Larson, and it said, the caption was God at his computer, and it showed God sitting in front of a massive computer monitor, and in the center of the picture was a man crossing a busy city street, and God's finger was hovering over a big key on the keyboard labeled smite. So God was deliberating whether to smite this guy or not. But if Gary Larson had drawn the cartoon with truth, then it wouldn't be God sitting at the keyboard, it's just the guy himself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because to me, what Leonard said about death is true. He says all death is suicide. And that is quite true. Nothing else kills you except you. It is your choice.
The other thing he said is that, and this gets back to what David was saying, is that people are spending their life, well, actually what you were both saying, people are spending their lives on death row, and then they wonder why their life isn't working out. So when you introduce them at your trainings to this idea of physical immortality, you're like basically getting them off death row.
That's right. And making them responsible for their own.
Which brings us back full circle to asking people to stop taking the suppressive drugs and being honest with themselves and responsible for their lives. And it's really the case that if getting people to realize that accepting 100% responsibility for everything that happens in your life, even if you can't right away see, how could I possibly be responsible for this?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So freeing. It's so empowering. It's like those things like, even if it's not true, you should live your life as though it is, because it's so much better than the alternative.
Totally. Yeah. Well, to me, healing death is no different than healing disease.
Mm-hmm.
To me, death is a disease. So it's raging.
I believe the latest statistics show that death is the leading killer of people worldwide.
I could probably validate that.
And the thought that it's inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
And the thought that we are obliged to die.
Yeah. Yeah, we're being pretty disloyal to our families and to society to even attempt physical immortality. We have to be totally disloyal to our family roots because all our ancestors are dead.
That's where some words of Leonard's come back. In a conversation with him a few years ago, he said that the way we have gone and headed in our teaching is very strongly on the left-hand path. And that comes up in esoteric circles, a left-hand path versus right-hand path dichotomy. Right-hand path is about dissolution into the infinite. The great worm in the sky, become just part of the mass. We are one people, we are one spirit, we are one earth.
One consciousness.
Whereas the left-hand path starts on the premise that we are individuals, or we are simply random agglomerations of dust with certain mechanical principles inside, with some possibility of gaining consciousness and becoming individual. And it is a path of the self-created God rather than a path of surrender or sublimation to, the big God in the sky. And it's a path of much greater responsibility. It's a path of not being able to simply let go, surrender, and let the big guy in the sky take care of us. Damn, we've got to take care of ourselves. And part of taking care of ourselves is, well, even if we can't stop the drugs of suppression, a first step is itemizing and listing all of the suppressive things we're doing and acknowledging that we are acting on an agenda of suppression. And then once we accept the things we're doing that are suppressive in nature, then we can start to devolve out of the need for those suppressions. We create a quality of life where it feels better to be conscious, better to be free than it feels to be suppressed. Because what the hell is the point of doing all the work, clearing our stuff and becoming conscious if it's not feeling better?
Yeah, I mean, the body is a great feedback mechanism. The body and the emotions within the body, all that, the energy of the emotions in the physical body, the energy of the physical body as well. It's like telling you how you're doing. It's like your feedback mechanism.
That's right. And without a body, like if you choose to drop the body, you're pretty stuffed. That's how I see it, because you need a body to evolve. Like your body is where all the stuff is stored that you need in order to evolve each time you have a release. So dropping off the body is not the answer, because consciousness reaches its own level. So any crap that you haven't dealt with now, you take with you. But the problem over there is you don't have a body, so you can't grow anymore. You can't evolve anymore. So when you're over there, you want to be here. So, and when you're here, a lot of people want to be there because they believe it's the pie in the sky after you die. But I don't see it that way. I see it that consciousness finds its own level. So as conscious as you are now, with the rest of the crap that you haven't dealt with, you take over there. But because you haven't got a body anymore, the work has stopped until you can find another couple of parents and reincarnate again and have another go.
And then it takes you like 20 years to remember everything you learned the last time
That's
around.
right. Absolutely. Because you get amnesia. Once you enter that blocked DNA, amnesia happens. So although there are a few kids that I know about that do have memory of the past life, but why go through death and rebirth over and over and over and over if you have the opportunity to do it all this lifetime, and perhaps even get the opportunity not to drop the body, but to take it with you if you choose to go elsewhere. So if you have totally immortalized the body, and the body is totally enlightened, there's no reason why you can't take the body with you wherever you.
Well, yeah, it doesn't even have to be. It doesn't even have to be like a conflict. A very religious woman, and Western immortalist Annalise Guerin, said that death is the dreary back door to heaven, but there is a glorious front door for those who overcome.
That was a beautiful bridge building to give people an alternative to the traditional Christian construct. Like, she was very heavily mired in Mormon Christianity, and like, that's a great bridge to, you know, to get out of that mindset.
Yeah, she even wrote a book called Ye Are Gods.
Quoting Jesus, who was quoting the Old Testament prophet. So it's not like this idea is radical or new. It's just, you know, the Old Testament guy said it thousands of years ago, and then Jesus reminded everybody that he said it in his time, and then Annalise Guerin reminded everybody in our time that, you know, you call yourselves Christians, Jesus said this, and, you know, if he walked into church today and said it, you'd probably crucify him again.
Yeah, well, he was teaching us that death was not inevitable. He was teaching us that it was his choice. Like, he had an affirmation, I will rise again in 3 days, before they even crucified him, which he did. So he was teaching everybody about their own power.
We've even
about the power of choice of life and death.
Yeah.
So that's what he was all about.
That finds support as well in the recently discovered apocryphal text, the Gospel of Judas, which has been carbon dated back to a time frame compatible with a lot of the other gospel and apocryphal writings. And one of the strong premises in that Gospel of Judas is that there was an agreement for Judas to help set up the crucifixion and to actually report Jesus to the authorities as a source of insurrection, you know, needing to be, you know, brought in for justice.
Well, he had the ability to dematerialize, so why didn't he? It doesn't make sense.
He allowed himself to get captured.
Yeah, I think it was a setup. Yeah.
Because he wanted to demonstrate, like, if he wanted to demonstrate that death isn't real. Because if you undo, like, that's like the biggest difference between how we perceive earth and how we perceive heaven. Heaven is eternal life, earth is death. So if you show everybody death isn't really a thing, that's going to like begin the inevitable process of waking people up.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, it's okay where everybody's at. You know, I'm just so comforted and happy to have reached that place of peace, and that there is a glorious equilibrium in place, and that equilibrium will produce different formations of character and being and life and personality. And at rare moments, that equilibrium will produce such a construct of personality in a person that they won't be able to achieve the same kind of suppression that others can, and they will embark looking for answers. And rather than being one of the majority of baby spiders that gets eaten up by the mother every time, it'll be that person will become one of the spiders that actually gets away from mother and achieves its own life.
Yeah. I was worried that Leonard's death would damage rebirthing, but it hasn't. What it's done is it's made it more popular. Like, breathwork at the moment is going wild, especially in this. Like, this country has been way behind in accepting rebirthing until now. And now it's the most popular thing you can do. Like our courses are becoming so popular. Like we don't have to lift a finger. Our students bring other students in.
Yeah, that's always great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
We find it increasingly difficult to sell our courses through conventional marketing channels because the gap between, I guess, the spiritual, mental, emotional lifestyle that we support versus the the default state of consciousness in mainstream society has become so big. It's a massive, massive jump that you just can't sell that. People have to be ready. People have to want it. They have to have had experiences in life that lead them to that desire. And then, they come along and the door's open.
Yeah, we describe ourselves now as being teachers of teachers. Like we are training teachers and sending them out. And
right.
so we no longer attract people who aren't ready.
Well, in the spiritual marketplace, when you're marketing in the spiritual marketplace, it's like it can be honestly just another form of suppression. People will go and take, this, it's just another form of suppression. When you're offering like true freedom from suppression, then you're so far from the mainstream that the typical, television commercial just doesn't even make sense. It's just not going to work.
That's right. The gap is too big. Yeah.
You also offer things other than, are you mainly just doing your 9-month training? That begins in October?
Yep.
Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so have a little bit of time to get themselves organized.
Yeah. We're still doing a training at the moment. We're into we've just taught the 7th month. So a week or so ago.
Okay.
7th month. So we've got 2 months to go.
And you also see clients for just
Yes.
one private session? You do
Yes.
that as
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
all right. Did you want to give out any contact information other than just the website again? Well, I guess the website has everything else.
The website has that information. It's got phone numbers and email contact form.
Yeah, it covers everything.
humanevolution.nz.
Yeah.
Okay. Humanevolution.nz, and I put that up with the description of the upcoming program, and I'll put that up when I put the program itself up as well. I want to thank you so much for doing this and coming to us all the way from New Zealand. You told me the mountain behind you was a volcano. Does New Zealand have a lot of volcanoes, or are they all extinct?
Yeah, it does. No, it does have quite a few active volcanoes.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that one.
New Zealand is like a sleepy place for sheep.
Well, it's a place.
Yeah.
It's a really good place to be if you are a geophysicist. Amazing stuff to study.
Wow.
Pretty diverse.
Okay, and I think I interrupted you, Pauline. You were about to say something before I asked about the volcano.
Well, it's left my mind what I was about to say. So.
Okay, but is there anything else like any parting words that you wanted to leave the listeners with?
No, I just hope that this program reaches people who are ready or getting ready to go down the path that we've been traveling on. And if so, we would love to hear from them.
Yeah, thank you again for coming on the show and for putting up with the time zone differences and the connections over the internet.
Thank you. Thank you very much for doing this.
It's my joy to get like real serious people who are doing serious spiritual work are contributing positive energy to the entire world. It's like you may be doing like whatever a handful of 6 people at a training, but your trainings are constantly going on. Teacher of teachers, you send them out in the world, and they are impacting other people, and those people are impacting other people. And I think the world is better because of the work that you two are doing in it. So
with each training, we're training better teachers because we're getting more experienced as we go on. So every training that we do, at the end of it, we look at each other and say, wow, that was the best training we've done. So every training we do that. So we're getting better at being teachers. And yeah, and it always feels like the best training we've ever done, every time.
that's great. That's great. And I bet the most common feedback you get from everyone that you work with, which seems like a small thing, but I think it's probably a really major thing, is people say thank you, and they really mean it.
Oh, well, most of my male clients always ask me if they can call me mum, which I find very endearing. They all the men, ask if that's okay with me, and I say, "Wow, it's my pleasure. It just makes me feel wonderful."
That's a great thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So we will say goodnight for now, and we're going to end the Zoom recording, and So let me just say thank you everyone for joining us here on Children of the Sun on WSTX AM 970, streaming live over YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch TV. You can catch us there during the show, and then you can see the rebroadcast afterwards. And we're here every Friday afternoon, 12:30 to 2:30. Everybody have a great weekend. Get out in nature, enjoy yourselves, and we'll see you again here next week. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you, Ray.
Bye-bye.